Hello. We recently conducted some research as part of our talent acquisition benchmark program, which suggested that an employer's diversity and inclusion efforts were being deprioritized as a result of the challenges of dealing with the COVID pandemic. To explore this in more detail, we hosted an expert panel on a webinar last week to discuss what employers can do to ensure that D&I remains fully embedded in their strategy. Of course, this was also as the issue of racial inequality and its progression into a wider discussion about D&I was propelled not just to the top of the corporate agenda, but the wider news agenda. The killing of George Floyd was an obscenity, and for many people, what made it even worse was the way in which his colleagues did nothing. How does an organisational culture become so rotten that someone can literally squeeze the life out of another human being whilst their co-workers do nothing? The hideous irony is that the motto of the Minneapolis Police Department is to protect with courage, to serve with compassion, which demonstrates beyond all doubt that a mission statement on its own is utterly meaningless. However, in a perverse way, there is hope. And the reason I say that is because I think it's actually far harder to create a truly callous culture than it is to create one that is genuinely compassionate. And this intersects with my colleagues and me in two ways. First of all, I believe that anyone who has any kind of platform has a duty to speak up and not remain silent. And secondly, one of the most important aspects of what we do as a business is to promote practical steps that our network can take to improve their own organizational cultures and to help employers attract and keep the people they need. And diversity and inclusion has always been an integral part of that. Our webinar brought together some of the UK's leading practitioners in this area to share their views, and the summary of the findings is in the link in this post. But there were three key points I wanted to highlight. First of all, protected groups are more likely to be in the roles and levels that are most affected by job cuts. So employers need to think very carefully about what steps they can take to mitigate this. Secondly, one of the clearest trends that has shown up in our benchmark program for the last 2 years is that employers rank the achievement of D&I objectives as a key element of their talent strategy. However, when asked how much the achievement of these objectives is built into their reward systems, either through financial or career development and advancement rewards, there seems to be a rather big gap. So this is certainly something that needs to be looked at pretty urgently. One other point that came up in our webinar is that there was very little support for unconscious bias training. All of our panelists were unconvinced by its utility, and it was suggested that a much more effective solution is to make cultural intelligence and inclusive leadership a measurable part of a leader's performance. Specifically, this involves identifying bias-based behaviors and processes, and then reviewing employee experiences such as hiring, succession planning, promotion, and reward to ensure that any bias is removed. So in summary, if your D&I strategy is embedded in your wider business strategy, it's far more likely to withstand the current challenges. And a key element of ensuring it is embedded is for leaders to be relentless about discussing it. We'll be revisiting the ideas about practical points employers can take in another webinar soon. But in the meantime, the link to the report is in the post, as is the link to our benchmark program, where, amongst other things, you can assess how your own D&I resourcing efforts compare to your sector as well as the market more widely. Thanks for watching. Cheers.